So today I want to talk about something that for me has been a little bit confusing. And it's something that I haven't always used consistently in my own code, and that is commenting in JavaScript. Now, what is the purpose of commenting? Commenting is to solve the problem of misunderstanding or lack of understanding. So I think we've all had the experience of opening up a program and seeing some JavaScript, and you look at it and you think, I have no idea what this does. And at least I've had that many times. And you think, well, wouldn't it be nice if there was some kind of way to explain the program to me so that I understand it and so that I can, use it properly? Well, that's what code comments are for. And what we can see here, and I'm using this freecodecamp.com for this explanation. I use this site all the time. It's an incredible resource. But what they say is that there are two ways to comment code in JavaScript. And what is a code comment? It's essentially code that gets ignored by the program. So when you write, for example, 2 forward slashes, the information that is on that same line after those 2 forward slashes is ignored by the program, and that's called a single line comment, and it looks like this. This is an inline comment. Inline. So it's some say inline, some say single line comment, same thing. And then we learned that there's the other way, which is a forward slash followed by an asterisk and a closing asterisk followed by a forward slash. This is how you write a multi-line comment. So you could write it anything you want in here, and it gets ignored by the program. Now, what this says is, you're supposed to use comments in order to clarify the code. Here it says your best practice as you write code, you should regularly add comments to clarify the function of parts of your code. Good commenting can help communicate the intent of your code both for others and for yourself. Well, it says, and for your future self, but I suppose it could be for your current self too. I guess it's always for your future self, right? You write something and then that's for you a couple of moments later, but, I would think pretty instantaneously, you might forget what something does. I know I have. But you might think, well, okay, it says, regularly add comments to clarify the function of parts. So here we have a little code example, right? There's a lot of parts to this code. You have this log method on the console. You've got you've got a variable, you've got a declaration, you've got a for loop, you've got all these conditions. You need to understand iteration. You need to understand str, and that this is a string, and strings have this length property, and there's a lot of things you could explain, and it would seem rather trivial to have to explain all of that. Now, I think that where this goes, at least in part, is that it is subjective, slightly subjective, to decide what is something that needs to be clarified. And I was asking myself this, well, when does something need to be clarified? Because, code that is written well, for a competent software developer, you should be able to understand what it says. And I found this explanation at this site, javascript.info/comments. And they kind of go through some guidelines around what are bad comments and what are good comments. And here it says, novices tend to use comments to explain what is going on in the code, like this. This code will do this thing and that thing, and who knows what else. And they're doing it with very complex code, which I think is sort of written sarcastically here. And that is an area that could quickly lead to overkill, just like we were explaining before in this code. If you are explaining, here's what this does, this thing iterates. Let's say we do a multi-line comment here, and we say, and this auto completes it for you. This is a for loop. It iterates and prints, or it logs the value of the variable I to the console from 0 to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, to 5. That's stupid. 5 times. Going from 0 to 4. And this comment is something that doesn't need to be understood by everybody. Like, people should know, if you're a software developer, you should know what a for loop is, and you should know, what a string is, and that you can have this length property of the string. But what is useful is when you have a function that you are creating, and somebody needs to reuse it. You can go in and say, look, this is what the function does. We're creating this function. Here's how you use it. Why do we do something this way? So here, what we have is we have a for loop, and you could also use a while loop. And I'm sure there's multiple ways to get this I to print, to log to the console 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I keep saying print, but I mean log to the console 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So providing your rationale, your justification for, let's say it's some complex code. Why did you solve it in this way versus another way? Was this way more efficient than another way? So providing some reason for why the task is solved this way is apparently a good way. If you're explaining the overall architecture of the program, you're explaining the function usage. How do you use this? Like, what does this function do? And, your solutions when, especially when they're not obvious. Those are some areas where you can use codes, or can use comments. The issue is use comments, but only as much as needed and not more. I think that with this basic JavaScript class, the idea is, good comments, clarify the parts of your code. The thing is, when you're first starting out, you might need everything clarified, where somebody a little further down the road may not need everything clarified. So really just following the guidelines of, like, are we explaining the overall architecture? Are we explaining the function usage? Are we explaining, important solutions that, they're not immediately obvious as to why you would do it this way as opposed to another way? That's kind of how I think about this. And, I don't know if that's a perfect guide. I think that there's still going to be subjectivity built into even that, and you kind of have to use your judgment about it, or maybe follow the guidelines of whatever organization you find yourself working for. But this is kind of how I think about comments, and this is where I think I will end this discussion.